Lindsay. I'm 35 years old. I live in Florida. I'm a certified addiction counselor in Florida. Um, and I'm a nationally accredited alcohol and drug counselor, which is super crazy to say that. It sounds so weird coming out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Um, because I myself was, I struggled with substances for a long time, actually, for years. And so I came into my own recovery. So that is what I do now, is try to help others that were struggling in similar ways that I was with, mental health and, and
Yeah.
drug addiction. Um, yeah. And, I work for a treatment center now. It's like an in-home treatment center kind of concept. And
Nice.
it's, it's very new for me. It's been like 6 months I've worked here, and I'm very I'm like pleasantly surprised at how this all works. And I used to work at for the past 10 years I've worked at inpatient treatment centers. And so this is like we go to the home is the
Oh
treatment
yeah.
center, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's like, so it incorporates, their daily living. It's not like you're in this bubble for 30
Yeah.
days, 60 days, 90 days.
So kind of like hospice care for somebody that's like going through like cancer treatment,
I
or like don't necessarily need to go to the hospital all the time for it.
Right.
You're kind of just at home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Oh,
so
cool. I don't
it's
think I'd.
me, and so they have their own treatment team, like me and another recovery advisor, and then a clinical care coordinator. It's really cool. So the whole concept
Yeah.
is opened my eyes a lot to the different possibilities and care of addiction.
Possibilities.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's cool. Um,
That's cool. I don't think I realized that was
Me
I
either.
don't know a lot of things when it comes to addiction, so I'm about to learn a lot from your story, but
Yeah.
I don't think I realized that that was even a thing. But it like that makes sense. Like, why aren't you? Like why aren't you treating people like that? Like in their homes, or where they're at least comfortable, at least to begin with.
Right. Yeah.
So what got you to this point then?
Whew. So much. What got me to this point? Well, I think when I got a year sober, and I'll start before that, but when I got a year sober, I got offered a job. I begged for a job at at the treatment center that I went through and got sober at, and I had stayed sober through 12-step fellowships, initially, and after treatment and throughout treatment. And when I got a year sober, they offered me a job there. Just to work
Hmm.
around the clients and in the office, not a
Yeah.
counseling position or anything like that. That took me years and years to be able to work up to that point. But um, like a health technician, behavioral health technician, they call them, just
Yeah.
helping and around the houses that they stayed in, inpatient treatment centers. And I've worked at 5 other treatment centers since then, which has been wild. And I've done admissions and mental health, PTSD, veterans PTSD treatment, inpatient center, just a lot of different stuff that I never thought that I would be doing,
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
um, like I said, I'm 35 now, and I went to treatment myself for drug addiction and co-occurring disorders, in 2013 was the final the last time I went to treatment and got sober. But it was a long journey before that, even though I
Yeah.
was, what, 24, but it seemed like, I had really reached my bottom quite quickly. Um,
Yeah.
but I am grateful for that, which sounds kind of like, what? But
Yeah. Right.
but I am grateful that I did have such a low bottom for myself, which was, jails and institutions, you know, uh, what do they call, psych wards or whatever they call them, mental health inpatient places. Um, the psych holds for 72 hours. I experienced that quite a few
Yeah.
times, throughout those days. But, all of it kind of all of it is kind of a blur now in a weird way. It feels like a different person. Um, and I
Yeah,
just,
I can imagine it does.
yeah,
Yeah,
just talking to you and others now about it is so surreal because I remember, when I was 16, 15 and 16 years old, I I don't know like if the mental health came before, I mean, the symptoms or the addiction, or if I was trying to um kind of self-medicate myself with, my depression and stuff with drugs and alcohol. I don't know, but um I just knew that I was in like crisis mode at like 15, 16 years old, and I thought I
yeah,
found a solution with alcohol that this is going to make me feel whole or better. Um, because I kind of, it was like, high school, ninth grade, wanting to fit in. And,
yeah. I was gonna say, I mean, that's like the hands down the worst time period of your life, no matter what happens in your adult life, because there's everything changing, from like the middle school age, like, on until high school. I mean, your brain doesn't really solidify everything until you're like 24, 25 anyway, but
right.
everything is changing at that point, biologically, psychologically, physically, like all these things are happening. And it's like, if you're not aware of it,
Mm-mm.
number one, and the people around you are not aware of it, then, you're searching.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it came down to.
Yeah,
It, and because we're going through all those growing pains and everything, and I'm like, who
yeah,
am I? What am I? And you want to fit in, and just all that stuff at once. And so, searching for something to feel okay, and I drank, and I was like, okay, maybe this, my self-esteem, my confidence, it wasn't
yeah,
real, but to me it was at that time. It
yeah.
it gave me
How does
courage.
how does that occur? How does that occur though at like a young age? Like where did the ideas come from,
Um,
or where did even like the thought process? Because I can even looking back on my time period then, like, for starters, I mean, my parents just aren't like, we're never drinkers. Like, I think I maybe saw them like, at special
mhm.
occasions on that, and they still aren't. And it wasn't like they like, this is bad stuff, like, don't go near it. It's just not who they ever were. But then I also didn't have like friends around me that like were like interested in that. So I don't know if it was like the perfect,
Right.
perfect rainbow, not the perfect storm, the perfect rainbow of like not being around that, or
That is
what. But like,
very,
where do you think, looking back, where do you think that kind of became an option for you? Maybe I should say it like
no,
that.
that's perfect. See, the thing is too is, so my parents, I'm an only child, and my parents never drank. My dad had been sober for since I was 3, actually. He had been sober, and we kind of had
Oh, wow.
similar
So,
experiences, but I didn't know that until I got
yeah,
older. Um, and so I kind of behaved a little bit like he did with the alcohol and other substances. But
yeah,
I didn't know that. My parents are just always like, it runs in your family, stay away from it. And I was like, I did the DARE
yeah,
program. I'm like so into. I'm like, I'm never gonna do
yeah,
this, and so it is. It's fascinating. It's very. I don't really know. I think maybe, I remember being in ninth grade, and honestly hearing a girl, this pretty girl, and all the guys were talking to her, and I remember her saying, "Oh, I got drunk at the football game," and it's so weird that this sticks out to me this many years later. But I was like, "Oh
yeah.
my gosh!" Like, they're all talking to her, and like, and like I saw
It just makes
that, and I'm
sense.
like,
Yeah,
maybe that's
yeah,
what I need to do, and I need to dress like that, and and whatever. So I think it kind of culminated from different experiences, and knowing that,
yeah,
even though I knew like this is bad, don't do this, and I am, I'm like, well, I'm gonna try it, and I did, and I went to a
yeah,
football game drunk, and I got in trouble, and it was a horrible experience. And I don't want to say like I was a goody goody, but I kind of was, like, very like teacher's pet kind of when I was younger, and I had a
just not expected,
Yeah,
right?
it was very unexpected. I
Yeah,
very my mom kept a really good watch over me, I guess you could say. It was very I
yeah,
was in gymnastics. I went to gymnastics and competed in gymnastics tournaments like God, I would say like I was in gymnastics like 3, 4 days a week, like after school. So I was
yeah,
very busy. We lived in a nice neighborhood, went to Disney every Sunday. Um, like it was kind of a perfect childhood. So I don't know. It's very weird. It's very weird. And I
yeah,
question it to this day, like, how does that happen? And same with like the mental health. I just remember being 16 years old and I'm like, I don't feel right. And I'm like, Mom, I'm like, I'm
yeah,
depressed, but I don't really know what was contributing factors at that time. I don't remember. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like,
Or probably didn't even know what that means. I mean, even as
no.
adults, we're like, you think depressed is, crying on a cloudy
Yeah.
day, and it's not. You could be smiling and sunny, but in the back of your head, like you don't see any hope. Like
Mm,
we're confused. So
very confused. Yeah.
especially when you're that age, it's like I always my wife and I were middle school teachers for years.
Cool.
And we have a 2-year old and a 9-month old at the moment, and it's funny like knowing what we know from a teaching standpoint and how we were trained as Montessori
Hmm.
teachers to look at the stages of development that our 9-month old, our 2-year old, and the middle schoolers we taught and ourselves, we're all the same. We just have different understandings of what we're going through. Like
Mm,
my son cried this morning because mom left, and he's never done that. Like he's fine, but it's like what range of emotion, and he's now able to verbalize that. Whereas this 9-month old does the same thing. Like she'll cry if mom just steps out of the room,
right.
right? But she doesn't know what that
Hmm.
means. He knows what that means. So it's just,
Very true.
it's just interesting to like hear that, at 15, 16, that here's what you're going through, and you were able to say that like this is what you're feeling, but you
Right.
still don't know what that actually means, and
No.
so you look to find what's going to help you find meaning in that, or who's going to define that word for you.
Very excellent point. Let's, it is. Yeah, because I I don't know. I just know that
Yeah,
sorry. I just know that it was very difficult for me and I know that the brain my brain has conveniently forgot a lot of stuff I believe, that
yeah,
was maybe traumatic to me
yeah,
and I think a lot of those times and that's probably why a lot of it is a blur my brain has tried to like block out and like oh maybe it wasn't that bad or um
yeah,
it's very interesting and I'm still like years later like I'm constantly working on myself and trying to like look at those things from the past and not in the aspect of like dwelling on them but just to look how things connect and like you said development like
yeah,
I'm in school right now and I'm taking a class human development in the lifespan and wow like I'm learning so much that
yeah,
I never I never realized like how everything contributes to it, the environment and everything like
yeah.
that. It's fascinating.
Do you look back though, like you said, like it's kind of like blocked out in a sense, and some people, certainly do that because it's like I don't want to process that. But it sounds like, not only just physically going to recovery, but here, being somebody that's there to help somebody like heal and support their journey. Do you feel like you're blocking out, or that being fuzzy has a different meaning than somebody that would be like, no, like that was like the worst time, I'm not dealing with this right
Um,
now, and then lo and behold, like years later it blows up in their face, or
no, I think that I've had to deal with it and come to terms with it like little by little as it's gone along. I think that maybe I'm just I'm so used to it being a part of my life too that
yeah,
in telling my story so many times because now it's kind of a part of my job in a way. Not to tell my story, but
sure, yeah,
to relate and to, I can self-disclose a little bit. And I choose to disclose certain events or things that may benefit the client to,
yeah,
but I try not to go in too much, but So I think maybe I'm just so used to it too, and maybe it's not just um protecting myself. I think it was like that for a long time though, until I got
Yeah.
sober, and then it was like, oh, because things started coming up, and I'm like, did that really happen? Like I
Yeah.
didn't, and then I'm like, yeah, that definitely it definitely happened.
I definitely
Yeah,
did.
because you know,
So go from the football
oh
game
yeah,
then,
okay,
and where this experience happened, that like what continued to occur, and why did it, knowing what you know, as far as like, the fact that here was your family background, like that's out of character for you. I won't even say it like you were,
right,
you know, the teacher's pet kind of thing. It was just out of character. But how did it continue, that knowing that you said, like you said, that, you felt awful?
yeah,
What made it, what made it go on? Or snowball, I guess.
absolutely. Mostly, I think so. Okay, so after that night, I got kicked out of school. I had to go to a secondary school for the rest of the year. That was ninth grade year.
Wow.
That was a freshman year of high school.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I went there the rest of the year, and kind of just I learned I picked up different kind of things that I'd never been exposed to before there, like different
Sure.
yeah, different types of childhoods, different stories, things like that that I hadn't really been exposed to growing up. And so I started like seeing and learning different things, and so I started sneaking out, and just it was it was almost like it wasn't to like just be like get in trouble or do anything like that. It was I just remembered doing what felt good, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I felt
Absolutely.
like I was so growing up sucked, and high school sucked and everything, sucked. And so
Yeah.
this was like my way of like maybe having control of the
What was going on?
situation
Yeah.
with everything I'm growing up and all this everything else being out of my control. It was like, okay, this is my relief.
This is, yeah.
And I messed up my gymnastics. I don't want to, I wasn't interested in doing that anymore. And I had worked my whole life competing and doing all that. And I had a full ride to college, and I messed that up. And what I think takes precedence is after a while, I got so used to going to that drink or a drug that eventually it's a no brainer. Like my brain finds
Yeah.
shortcuts, and it's like, yeah, that's gonna work. That's gonna
That
make
worked.
you,
Yeah.
that's your coping skill. Like knowing though, eventually, and it really sounds wild to myself even saying this, that eventually, when years down the line, because it just gets worse, it progresses, the alcoholism and addiction.
Sure.
I found that to be true in my experience, despite always hearing that from others. It is true
Yeah.
for me. And um, it just started occurring more and more and more. Partying wasn't just partying anymore. It was daily life. It became, well, I can't go to a job interview. I can't do this. I can't work. I can't talk to people. I can't do this if I don't have some kind of medicine or, you know,
Yeah.
something. And then on top of it, my mental health compounded it, the anxiety, the depression.
Yeah.
They diagnosed me bipolar at one point, which years later they said, the psychiatrist is like, well, I don't know, because you were using at the time and it mimics
You were,
it.
yeah. Matt, yeah.
So it's like, well, what's going on? Um,
Yeah.
but the thing is too now, like eventually it snowballed out of control to where I got in trouble, and I knew it was like, Lindsay, like I can't not do it. And it
Yeah.
sounds weird, but it was like, I'm going to go out and drink tonight and or do drugs. And I was, heroin, crack, fentanyl. I was doing all that. I was an
Everything.
IV user. Um and and that came later. I never thought I would be like that. That wasn't
Yeah.
that wasn't something I ever saw. That was not normal to me. That was, you're bad, that's bad, and that's my belief.
Yeah.
And eventually it was like everything
No.
changes. The mind is just so
Yeah.
powerful, how it took over. And I think that's kind of how it went for those years that it progressed. And um kind of down the line, like, the tolerance goes up and I'm exposed to more, and then more things happen while under the influence or while trying to obtain drugs and alcohol, or in those situations that then I have to hide it more and I have to use more, and
Yeah.
the trauma and this and that. And so eventually it came to a head. And how old was I? I kept getting arrested. Forgot about that.
Yeah.
Um, I would black out drunk. And that's another thing too. It's like, well, if you keep blacking out drunk and you keep getting arrested, you keep getting in trouble, why don't you stop? And it's like, yeah,
This is yeah.
I don't know. I'd like to, I liked to. I wish
Yeah.
I could have.
Yeah.
I did try with everything in me. I tried for so long. But I think that what I think now, looking back on it, is that there was such a strong drive to not feel the way that I felt inside, that I was willing to risk those consequences. Like, I knew
Yeah.
eventually, like, this is probably going to happen. You're going to black out. You're going to get in trouble. You're
Yeah.
probably going to get arrested again, because you keep getting arrested and waking up in jail, DUI, you know, battery charges, just really crazy stuff out of character that,
Just crazy stuff. Yeah.
yeah, not even, it was like not me. And a lot of shame comes with that
Sure.
I had to work through too, because if I keep that shame, if that stays, um, then I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing. I'm going to keep
That's
using,
right. It's
because
the
that is
same
the
same thing that
worst.
goes on. Yeah.
Yeah, that guilt and
Yeah.
shame is the worst feeling for me. It really did it. But yeah, and I finally, I got arrested like 10 times, and detoxed in jail, and I knew this wasn't normal. I don't want this to keep happening, but I couldn't stop it. It was like something hijacked my brain. Um,
Yeah.
and everything was just bad. And finally, I ended up going to prison in 2012, 2000, 2011, 2012. And I was drug free and substance free for the whole time. I got in some medications that worked really well. And since I'm
Yeah.
not on substances, on drugs and alcohol, those antidepressants and, mood stabilizer had a chance to work finally.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
figure, like, they don't work when you're drinking, Lindsay, like, amazing
But
how that works.
it's something to say though that, I mean, excuse me if it sounds like a simple analogy, but
No.
like, just looking at somebody that's going through just, just not even chronic anxiety or chronic stress, but like acute stress, like, you've got those same things that you're saying, like, I don't know what else to do. Like, I don't know but this is working. So, and like, people can tell you all the time, right? Like, and they're unhelpful sayings, relax, calm down, like
Yeah.
that. The same thing, just magnified now. Like, just stop drinking, like, just stop taking drugs, just stop doing it. But it's not that easy on any level, right? I mean, here's the most extreme level, and
Yeah.
I know the right thing to say. And even in my head, as you're talking, I'm like, why didn't you just stop?
Right.
And, but like, I mean, that's a perfect example. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, if
Yeah.
I'm stressed out, or if I have a friend or family member that's stressed out, like, all you want to say is like, well, then don't do that,
Right.
but we forget that it's not that easy.
Mhm.
Cause like you said, your mind is so powerful, and it has its own ways of trying to protect you. Right.
Right. And now working with others, it's so interesting. If my thought goes to that, my first thought is like, well, hey, but why are you, what are you doing? Like, and then I'm like,
Yeah.
like, kind of laugh at myself,
Well,
because
of
I'm like,
course
are you
they don't.
serious?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
so it's like instinctively I go there, and, you know, and want to say, because it seems so simple, and it's not for us, it's not for
Yeah.
anybody. Um, but one thing that, I wanted to share that I learned along the way is, for so long I thought there's something wrong with me, and
Yeah.
this really stuck with me until like just recently, like just the past few years, I started coming to terms with this, that there is nothing quote unquote wrong with me. I really thought like
No.
I'm totally like different from these people, I'd say they're normal people, normies, and kind of put myself in this category because I thought that identifying with other recovering addicts and alcoholics and calling myself a addict and alcoholic was what was best for me, and maybe it was at the time. Maybe
Yeah.
that was okay, but eventually I found that I'm like attaching a stigma to my own self, if that makes sense.
Huh.
Like I'm
No, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very very interesting for me to kind of come to terms with this the last maybe like 2 3 years, and I realized that I am my self-talk. I am kind of criticizing myself inside, and I didn't realize it, you know, to
Yeah.
being like, you're not the same as that person. You can't do this, you
Yeah.
can't do that. You're not normal. You're just a whatever, insert here,
Yeah.
alcoholic, addict, and this and that. And then, I got sick of that. And I'm like, I'm not. Like, I'm not an alcoholic, an addict. Like, that's not all that I am. I'm recovered. I'm recovering, whatever you want to say. And I'm just normal. And I can do anything that they can do. I'm on medications now, for my mental health, and I don't mess with them because and I have to see
Yeah.
my psychiatrist. I've seen him for the same one for 15, 20 years now, and so he knows me, but I don't mess with that stuff. Like, I know, like, I have to stay um on my kind of own treatment plan, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
Because if one thing falls, I don't want the whole if one thing falls in my foundation,
Yeah.
the whole house is going to fall down. I can't risk it. I can't risk relapse,
Yeah.
depression. That is very scary for me to go into that low spot. I've had relapses over the years to where I got into that low spot of
Well,
depression,
sure.
and to where I was like, I'm either myself or I'm going to pick up, and I ended up picking up.
Yeah.
My mind tricked me, but now I know what to watch out for. And I
Yeah.
like danger zone I get into, and I'm like, stay away,
No, and that's
you
yeah.
know?
I mean, and that's what you gain from it all, you know? I mean, I dislike when people tell you that like here's, 6 ways to cure this,
Yeah.
mental health issue or 10 ways to end anxiety for or whatever forever, and that's just not going to be the case because yeah, I mean,
No.
nobody can predict what's going to happen later, but what you can do is look at what's happened to you and know that when something happens again, and it sure will, here's what's working now and here's
Mhm.
what I can do to hold myself up. It may not exactly be the fix all for this situation, but at least it'll help me like clear ahead.
Right.
It's kind of refreshing to hear you say that because I mean most people, you're right, I mean they put that label and it's like, oh no,
Mhm.
I,
You're
I'm not doing
broken.
this again, but it's right. And
Mhm.
then they're gone. And then they spend their whole lives like in that just box. And it's like, nope, if I stray from this, I'm going to be lost again. It's not, it's just,
Mhm.
now you know this about yourself.
Right. It's like I
Yeah.
trust myself a little more than I did
Yeah.
yesterday,
Yeah. That's
you
a good way
know?
to put it. I mean, you trust yourself more now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the different experiences, and these the mishaps, the recurrences of relapses. I call them recurrences
Yeah.
now, but um, of drugs and alcohol that I've had. That doesn't make me a failure. And that's how I looked at it, and it would keep me from wanting to get back
Get better.
on
Yeah.
track.
I could see
And
that.
yeah, and then now I have to look at it like that was I didn't lose all that time learning about myself, and maybe I went back to that old coping skill, and I know differently now, and so I just have to keep
Yeah.
managing my mental health, I just got to stay on the right track, and like I got to do
Yeah.
these things, and um I'm grateful that things got so bad so that I have a chance to see how good things can be and like what good is for myself.
Yeah.
Like I have that to compare to, and if it didn't get so bad, I wouldn't have gotten better.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have looked at treatment as, I can't do this
I
anymore.
can
I
do
need
something.
help, and I
Yeah.
put myself in treatment after prison. And so that's when that began. I had to do that.
Yeah.
I just knew I couldn't do it on my own. I tried so many times to stop. And,
Sure.
between the
And
mental health and
so,
that,
yeah. And so putting yourself in treatment and ultimately here, like continuing to work in treatment, like, do you feel that that's like part of your recovery process, or do the two kind
yeah.
of, they're still intertwined, but like they're two separate entities? Like,
I
how
think
did you
that
come across this?
they are, that's a good question too. A lot of people ask me that. It's part of my recovery to a certain extent, like
Yeah.
it is intertwined, but I've learned over the years too, because of burnout and stuff, just being in a helping profession, that I cannot pour from an empty cup,
Sure.
and everybody would say that to me, and I'm like, yeah, 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 and
No
it's
big deal. Yeah.
right, and
Yeah.
it's so true, because
Nope.
I can get in that burnout and to where I'm just like not taking care of myself. So
Yeah.
I try to just really focus on the self care too, and um, it can be hard sometimes, but just focusing on that,
Sure.
you know. I have to. But yeah, it helps me because I love being surrounded by it and I love helping people, and that is part of it. I tell my clients too, I'm like, you may not believe me, but me helping you
Yeah.
like helps me probably just as much, if not more,
Yeah.
as helping you.
Well,
Like
it's a
really
community
does.
of connectedness there that, it's like I said in the beginning, like the phrase, misery love company should have more to it. Is it's not just the company, it's the fact that something, you can be gleaned from the fact that we're experiencing something similar.
Right.
You have a completely different story than I do, but there's at least something in there that goes, wait a minute, like I wasn't even thinking about that as an option, or you know what, like
Hmm.
that makes a lot of sense, something, right?
Right.
To be
Yeah.
learned from that, and it's good to hear.
Yeah, and it's like it's creating not comparison but relating to each other more, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's a big benefit of hearing other stories, because I could sit there and be like, oh gosh, you're like you said, like your story is totally, I don't, you're
I don't know,
bad.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like,
I didn't
no,
do
there's, but
that.
it's like looking at the similarities, and it's like those feelings are very similar, different
Yeah.
underlying feelings for us. It's
Beautiful.
crazy.
Well, thank you for sharing.